Okay guys, we are going to start with leaf morphology. Right, this is the external characteristics, but we're going to talk about the leaves. Hopefully you already saw the video on stem morphology. They're both really basic things you need to understand before we get into this. So we're going to start again, like I said, with the basics. What are some of the different things they call leaf parts? So I'm going to pluck this off of here, put that down, and what I'm holding, this little part that was attached to the stem, right? What I'm holding in my hand is called the petiole. Anything past that is the leaf. So in this case, this has a single blade, it's called, right? The edge of the leaf is called the margin. The bottom's called the base. The tip is called the apex. We'll go through some of those different things in a bit. The back, this is the veins. The vein that goes down the middle of the leaf is called the midrib, okay? So here's another example, something a little easier to see, right? I got a stem in my hand. I'm looking, so a lot of times it's hard to see what's petiole and what's stem. This is pretty obvious. The petioles are green, the stem is brown, so I can pluck one off here, right? I have the petiole in my finger. I now have this blade. This happens to be a lobe shape. We'll talk about it. Looks like a maple, but it's not. So again, the margin is the edge. I have my veins in the back. I can use to identify how many lobes this has by the veins. Okay, so that's another example of different leaf parts. So let's talk about leaf arrangement. How are they arranged on the stem, right? And so now these are leaf types. So let's talk about leaf types, right? So if I look at this, many of you know that this is a maple. I'm going to come down here, right? I'm going to follow the petiole down to the stem. I'm going to grab it. Now I have the petiole in my hand, and I have one blade beyond it. So this is a simple leaf. It's as basic as it gets, right? I have one blade per petiole. Simple, right? The next one, when I pull this off, so now let's take this guy here. Again, a little hard to tell, but I got the petiole at the stem. Now I'm holding the petiole in my hand. Do I have one blade or more? I have more. These are now called leaflets. I have 3 leaflets. This is called a trifoliately compound leaf. Right? We're going to cover 3 different kinds of compound leaf. This is trifoliate. Again, we only cover one plant that has this. Box elder sometimes does, but ultimately, yeah, this is a paperbark maple. Right? Now this part in between is called the petiolule that actually attaches the base of the leaflet. Okay, so that's trifoliate. So we have simple, and then we have trifoliately compound, and now we have, here's another one I got to identify. Here's the petiole attached to the stem, right? Pluck that off. Now if I look at it, how many leaflets do I have? I have 5. Many of you know this is a buckeye. This is a shrub buckeye called bottlebrush buckeye, one of my favorite shrubs. 5 leaflets. It's called palmately compound, as the name implies, with five leaflets. So anybody in Ohio, of course, I think pretty much knows buckeye leaves. All you Michiganders hate those. I'm a Michigan State Spartan, as you should know or could know. And my rule is I'll take a buckeye over a wolverine any day. Okay, so that's palmately compound. And then the next example of compound, here we go again. Here's the stem is brown. I got these big old rusty buds. Here's the petiole. I'm going to pluck it off. I got the petiole in my hand. Now I have multiple leaflets, but they go up here where these first set of leaflets are. This is now called the rachis. And the rachis, and now these are the petiolules that attach the leaflets to the rachis, right? So here I have 2, 4, 6. This is kind of a mutant one. Oh, no, I got 8. So this would be called even pinnately compound, right? Because it has an even number of leaflets. If I had a leaflet at the end here, it would be called odd pinnate, right? So that's our last type of plain pinnately compound. And then finally, we got the granddaddy of them all. So here, if we look, here's this big old thick stem with all those lenticels on it. Here's my swollen petiole. It's swollen because physics, it's got to hold up a lot of weight, right? So I'm going to pluck that off. Now, I've got the petiole in my hand, right? And then past the first few little blades here, I've got the rachis. So now look at the leaflets, like here, they're just attached right onto it. But here it has another substructure, right? And so this is called bipinnately compound because it has, it's compound 2 times, right? So this is an example of a Kentucky coffee tree. We only learned 2 plants that have bipinnately compound leaves. This is still one leaf, right? It has many, many leaflets, but it's one leaf because whatever the petiole, wherever it's attached to the stem, that's what it is. Okay, last thing on this tape we're going to talk about is leaf arrangement. How are the leaves arranged on the stem? Again, these are another parts of the basics, right? So here's another maple, and we can look at it. Here's my petioles, and notice how they are attached, or they're oppositely arranged on the stem, right? So we say that this plant has opposite leaf arrangement. The leaves are arranged opposite each other on the stem. This is our first category of trees we're going to learn, because it knocks down, and it takes like 15 of all of our trees and puts them into that category that have opposite leaf arrangement. Here's the next. This is the most common one, is called alternate. So again, now if I look at it, right, the leaves are alternating back and forth down the stem. So this is alternate leaf arrangement. Most of our plants have that. And then we have 2 that are pretty rare. This one is called World. This is Katsura tree, one of my favorite trees. Now, the interesting thing about Katsura is most of them are opposite. Periodically, you'll find sub-opposite. You see how these 2 are just not exactly opposite one another? There's some better examples down here, I thought. Yeah, right here you can kind of see how they're staggered. So they're not quite alternating, but they're not quite opposite either. So it's called sub-opposite. And again, the only plant we learn like that is Katsura tree. And then another one that's very unique. This one, if we look, I have 1, 2, 3 leaves arranged in the same spot. So it can't be called opposite because there's not just 2 of them, there are 3. So this is world leaf arrangement. And the only tree we cover with world leaf arrangement is catalpa. And some people call it cigar tree because of the big pods it has on it, fruiting structures. All right, so let's do a little quiz to wrap this up. So when we say what are the basics, right? As soon as we look at trees, we got to get our face in there and look at the basics. And by the basic, we mean leaf arrangement. 99% of the time, is it opposite or alternate? And then we say, is it simple or compound? So here, this is a pretty easy one, most of you know. So a little hard to tell down here, isn't it, whether it's opposite or alternate? So here's another trick you can use. Look at the previous branchlets. See, this thing only grew, literally, I don't know how well you can see that, but it only grew about 1/4 of an inch this year. So it's really hard to look at that and see whether those leaves are opposite or alternate. But if I look here, I can clearly see those branches are opposite. These branches are opposite. Clearly, this is opposite. If I click off a leaf, I hold it in my hand, I have 1 blade, so this would be an opposite simple leaf. Right? Opposite leaf arrangement, simple. Let's go to another common one. So here again, kind of hard to tell up here. Ignore the fruit, even though that tells you right away what genus of plant this is because of those fruiting structures are so unique. But I can look at the branches and see they alternate down the stem. And then I might be able to come over here where it grew a little more vigorously and see that in fact they alternate. So this is alternate leaf arrangement. And again, is it simple or compound? I'm going to take one off. I have 1 blade per petiole, therefore this would be alternate and simple. So I have opposite and simple and alternate and simple. Let's go to this one. Here's my stem, here's my petioles. Again, are they opposite or alternate? They're opposite, right? If I pluck one off, right, it comes out of here, it's palmately compound. So this would be opposite and palmately compound. That is the actual buckeye, Ohio buckeye. And then finally, I have this one for your quiz. So again, brown stem, green petioles, are they opposite or alternate? Opposite, or alternate, excuse me. They're alternate, right? And then if I pluck one off, is it simple or compound? So I have the petiole on my finger again, the rachis. These are petiole lules. I have multiple leaflets, right? They're not 3 of them. They're not palm-shaped. So this is pinnately compound. Is it odd or even pinnate? It's odd because it has one at the end. Again, we don't use that a whole lot, but okay. So there's a little quiz for you. We'll describe other leaf parts there soon.